Hi everyone, welcome to a special documentary. I'm the narrator, Leilola. I've also produced, edited and presented this documentary. I wanted to take a look into the financial struggles. In particular, the hotbed of football is the northwest of England. You've got the two big Manchester clubs and then you've got several of smaller clubs in the proximity of Manchester who are financially struggling to compete and stay afloat. Here we are in Macclesfield, where the club have been in disarray for quite a large time now. The club players refused to play against Crewe early on in the season, and the result of that, the FA fined them and also deducted the club 6 points with a suspended 4 more points to come. The owner stays away from games. He's currently out in Ibiza, and he's actually said that his other business needs come ahead of Macclesfield. The players have no training ground after the club couldn't afford to keep the training ground running. Kit sponsors have walked away from the club, such as Umbro and Macron, and an out-of-court settlement was reached with those to stop it from going further. Former manager Sol Campbell, who kept the club up here last season, is still owed money, and that is a 6-figure sum. The owner, who is Omar El Khadi, blames Brexit and also frozen bank accounts to the reason why the club are in financial distress, and his time, as I've mentioned, is dedicated to other business needs, whilst fans here try the utmost to keep this club going. There is hope that a takeover can happen through Joe Seeley, who is the son of former Manchester United goalkeeper Les Seeley, but even that is still rambling on. Macclesfield need change, and they need it fast. Moss Rose has the lowest support as the opposition arrive here in League 2, with average attendances at just 2,000. Is it the owner? Is it unpaid bills? Whatever the reason may be, this club needs help, and it needs massive help. With neighbouring clubs like City and United just up the road, is this harming this club as well? Stockport is a large town in Greater Manchester, 7 miles south-east of Manchester city centre. These are the Hatters going wild to celebrate promotion last season. However, it hasn't been plain sailing. Stockport are hoping to reach the playoffs in the conference this season, with the aim of reaching League 2, having already gained promotion last season from the Conference North. County have already suffered financial problems throughout the years. For going over a decade now, going into administration in 2009 for unpaid taxes. After the Sales Sharks moved and relocated, for the first time in 9 years, the Hatters had this place for their own. The local council bought the stadium after a plea by supporters to safeguard the stadium here, and it's actually currently leased back to the club. Attendances here at Edgeley Park average just over 4,000, which is the second most in the conference, just behind Notts County. Do the Manchester clubs really have an effect here? Stockport Community Leisure Centre own this club. The Hatters fans are hopeful, cautious, but they're in a lot more healthier position than some of their neighbouring clubs. this side of the ground is lovely. More on that shortly. Now, when you think of Oldham, the older fans will remember Oldham reaching the 1990 League Cup final, but also playing in the Premier League. Yeah, they were in the Premier League in the 92-93 season. They were founders and they were really doing well under Joe Royle. Of course, throughout the years, they've slipped down the divisions and find themselves in League Two. The attendances here, it's roughly about 3,300 on average every home game, and they'll be safe in League Two. They're a good few points ahead of the relegation zone, so they'll be safe, but the question remains uncertainty around the future of this club. Oldham are no strangers to debt. Former owner Chris Moore left the club owning money and selling some of their best players. Again, it was close. It was another club close to going out of business. However, fast forward a few years, in January 2018, the current owner, Moroccan Abdullah Lemsagam, purchased the club from Simon Corney after the club again fell into debt with unpaid tax bills, and the ground was raided by HMRC. The club scooped a massive coup in bringing in Oldham lad Paul Scholes, another one of these class of 92s which are linked to these regional clubs in the northwest. He came in, but he walked out after just 31 days, citing that players had to wash their own kit, the team bus didn't turn up, but I think the biggest factor for Paul walking away is that he said that the owner was interfering. Now, Lemsagam has turned around and said that how can I interfere with team selection when 3 weeks of the 4 weeks that Paul Scholes was here, that he was in Dubai. Who do you believe in? He also denies that players going home to wash their own kit is untrue, and he also claims that the team bus does turn up. Lemsagam also stated that he doesn't own this stadium, and that's by the previous owners, and the club are still having to pay rent to the previous two owners. Lemsagam owns 97% of the club, and the other 3% is owned by the Supporters Trust. That's a big problem if you don't own your own stadium. And it gets even worse. This nice stand behind me is the more modern of the stadium. If you go around the ground, it's very old and rusty and it needs a bit of TLC. And there's actually the local council who own this stand, and again Oldham are losing out on money. Just along here, there's a gym here which is open to the public. There's a couple of Oldham shops here where you can buy merchandise, and the north stand, the club are losing money. The fans are cautious. They've been in financial troubles in the past. With this new agent come owner, the Moroccan Lemsagam, the future seems a little bit uncertain. It could have went places with Paul Scholes, who knows. We'll have to see how this one develops, but at the moment this club is borderline. The club announced that they brought in a finance director towards the end of 2019 to help with financial incomes and revenues in and out of the business. Will that help things? The fans remain cautious. They've been in financial troubles in the past. This club at the moment is doing all right. Could be in a lot more healthier position. I wanted to get into a little bit more. Do the two Manchester clubs really have an effect, or is it just a case of bad ownership? I asked Clinton Ford, who's a Newcastle fan based in London, what his thoughts were of clubs struggling in the north.
They do have an impact because they are the two largest clubs, not just in Manchester but in the world, because everybody would want to come to them. If you're a younger player, you'd want to come to a Manchester City or Manchester United, but that does have a big impact on the smaller clubs around the area. Should they be helping out more? I think so, yes, because it's not only good for the city as a whole but for the game as a whole as well. The amount of success that both two clubs have had in the last 10 to 20 years, of course it's easy to gravitate to either of those two teams, but you've got to support your local teams. I'm a big advocate of grassroots teams and the local teams as well in the area, so you've got to be supporting the local clubs as well as the big two giants in Manchester. The PFA and all the governing bodies and all the big giants in football should be doing more, not only just for the local clubs, but again in terms of racism, something I'm big on as well. But will they get involved? Easier said than done, as I said. Case in point, obviously with Berry, the owner didn't have their due diligence done on him. and they've gone down, or they've not even existing now. So I think all chairmen should have, a safety check or some sort of ways and means of providing for that club done every 6 to 12 months.
Listen, Chairman, let's cut to the chase. They haven't bothered to pay us in months. You've constantly lied to everyone. The EFL, you have not shown facts. You haven't shown that you've got the money to sustain this club. For months we kept quiet. You've sacked good people at the club. You've not paid anyone in months. I'm on the verge of losing everything. I've had to listen to what you've had to say for months. You can say you've tried to save the club. The end of it all, get your money and leave the club.
Have the PFA paid you up to the CBA 50% of your wages? Yes or no?
Paid us 2 months' wage.
No, they're
which is a long.
Paid you 4 months. 50%.
Steve,
no,
I'm not going to row. I don't
yes
lie.
And no. Just answer yes or no.
I've been paid 2 months of the PFA, which is a loan. You have paid me once in 6 months. I do not lie.
So we're here at Bury. I've just been looking around, and it proper gets you, like, it really does get you. There's flags way over there from not just Bury fans, from other clubs as well. And I'm not gonna lie, I was welling up. A local community should never lose its club. Bury were scheduled to play in League One this season after incredible achievement of gaining promotion from League Two last season. Considering the financial restrictions at the club, that's a hell of an achievement to do that. Sadly, Bury were kicked out of the EFL in the 2019-20 season after failing to provide proof of funds. The history of this club as well, just to take that away, a lot more should have been done. Bury have won the FA Cup more times than some Premier League clubs. Bury have won trophies, a lot more trophies than some other Premier League clubs. How did this happen? Bury have had issues in the past with the collapse of ITV Digital, placed the club into administration in the 2001-02 season. However, in December 2012, the club had a transfer embargo placed on them again after falling into financial difficulties. The more recent times where Steve Dale bought the club in December 2018, he actually later admitted he didn't even know where Bury was. I mean, how can you let a man like that, who doesn't even know something that he's buying, where the location of his business is going to be? Where the EFL did they do the checks on him? Numerous times outstanding payments to players, to staff, were unpaid, and they were paid late several times, and outstanding tax bills still remained at Bury. Later, Dale admitted that the club were in debt with a whopping 1.6 million owed. In the summer of 2019, the manager walked out, players left the club, the opening 4 games of the season were suspended. The EFL gave Bury an ultimatum, 14 days to sort your act out or you're getting kicked out. On August 27th, 2019, CNN Sport and Risk were scheduled to do a takeover to save Bury at the last attempt. However, that takeover fell through, and of course we all know what happened next.
Fans at Bury Football Club say they're heartbroken as their club's been thrown out of the Football League after a failed takeover. The English Football League has expressed enormous regret. David Chisnell is at Gig Lane.
Well, the gloomy weather here at Gig Lane really sums up the mood in Bury today. A club with 134 years of history now has a bleak future, if any at all, after being kicked out of the Football League. Well, after missing a 5 o'clock deadline yesterday evening for a takeover here at the club to be completed, the governing body, the league's governing body, the EFL, has said that regrettably, after reviewing all options and despite late bids put to them, they have now decided to withdraw Bury's membership of the Football League.
Further court cases have came. The club still owed unpaid wages to staff. That is still rumbling on. High Court appearances, tax issues are still going on. Even Everton chairman Bill Kenwright wanted to save the club. He wanted to put £1 million of his own money into the club to try and save the money, but it was rejected because of conflict of interest. That is shocking. That is appalling. There's a history here, a real history. Yet, because of a conflict of interest, because he's chairman of Everton, can't loan a business loan to another business. that could have saved this club. It's recently been announced that fans of Bury would like to start a Phoenix club, starting in the local counties league, moving their way up the divisions. Do they start next season in the conference? Do they start lower? The future's really, really uncertain here. And who's to blame here? Is it the collapse of ITV Digital in the early 2000s? No, because Bury did bounce back. Steve Dale has took a lot of flack, and rightly so. He's partly the reason why Bury are where they are today. The AFL should have done a lot more to save this club, a hell of a lot more. They've let Bury FC, but more importantly, the whole lot of them, whoever's at fault, have let the fans down. The fans of this area don't have a football club anymore, which is heartbreaking. Of course, you've got Manchester City, Manchester United down the road. Bury have been in and out of trouble going on 20 years now. So you can't really put the blame at the two giants, A, for not helping out, and B, because fans support bigger sides. Steve Dale has to take a massive, massive flack for all of this. He does. He came in not knowing what he's getting into, but didn't put any money into it, and unpaid wages have crippled the club even further. The AFL need to have a look at themselves. They need to have a real hard look at themselves. You've got Bolton up the road who only just survived. This club didn't. This club didn't survive. The AFL said that they helped Bury. They could have done a lot more to save this club. It's the fans that I feel for. They've taken away a football club away from them. Their boyhood club is right there. And whoever is to blame, Bury fans don't have a club anymore.
Bolton Wanderers have been saved. Late last night, the English Football League gave Bolton 14 days to complete a deal or face expulsion from the EFL. But the 145-year-old club's survival has now been secured after Football Ventures completed its takeover.
And now we're at Bolton, where this club, most importantly, survived, unlike the neighbours Bury, who unfortunately didn't. Remember when they had players like Anelka? Remember when they had Ivan Campo, Hierro, Kevin Nolan, JJ Kocher, Djorkaeff, Gary Speed, God rest his soul. Quality players. When they were in the Europa League, flying high, top 10 finishes, with Sam Allardyce at the helm. Where did it all go wrong for Bolton? Allardyce left Bolton, and very similar to Blackburn, they struggled, and eventually Bolton went down. Bolton were relegated from the Premier League in 2012, and in 2015 the club fell into serious financial troubles. With 4 seasons in the Championship, it took its toll and eventually were relegated to League One in 2016, but they did bounce back straight away. However, 2 seasons in the Championship once more took its toll. Administration announced in May due to a tax bill, and again Bolton were relegated, this time down to League One. Players weren't paid allegedly for 5 months, and some players relied on food banks. The club would start this season with a deficit of minus 12 points because of going into administration. Pre-season games were cancelled, and the club started the season with just 3 professional players on the books. Players left for other clubs. They were sick, they were tired. Several of youngsters were fielded in the opening few games. Phil Parkinson had enough. He walked out on the club, and eventually he would later join Sunderland. As I've already mentioned 2 or 3 times, the club fell into liquidation, but the club was saved eventually. They were suspended by the EFL, unlike Bury, who were expelled. A buyer come in at the last minute to save Bolton. The new owners under Football Ventures Limited came in. The very next day, they appointed Keith Hill. The club then signed a whopping 9 players on transfer deadline day. The club may go down once more because of the point reduction. They are fighting back. They're starting to win some games. The most important thing for their fans is that they've got a football club, and that has to be priority going forward. I would like to wish every Bolton fan the best of luck. But it's not all bad news around Manchester. Take a look at Salford City. This season will be their highest finished in their history. The majority of their history has played in county leagues. Yes, they're backed by the class of '92 and Valencia owner Peter Kim ploughing the money in. They've got strength, they've got a lot of finance. They persuaded former Irish international Adam Rooney to leave Aberdeen to go and play in the 5th tier of English football last season. That shows the strength and the power that Salford have. They've rebuilt their stadium, and with the money, that is a success story even though Manchester United is just a few miles away. I wanted to ask Adam McCullough, who is a presenter on Full Time's Devils, is Manchester United and also Manchester City a real problem around the surrounding areas, or is it bad ownership?
I think that's a bit of a naive way to look at it in terms of saying, oh, I know, I think Man United and Man City are to blame. I think it's bad ownership to blame. And I think what it is all these owners are coming into clubs and they're seeing, the Premier League money. We want to get there. And they're throwing everything at it. I think actually who should be blamed is the FA, the Premier League, or who's doing these checks? Who's doing these good and proper tests?
Well, to EFL,
fitness and proper tests, or proper what they're called. Who's doing them? How did the Glazers get past that, by the way?
How did Mike Ashley get in?
Do you know what I mean? So actually, they should be doing more to prevent these bad owners coming into clubs. And I don't think it's down to Manchester City and Manchester United to be putting their hands in their pockets. I mean, the Glazers take money out of here. Why are they going to put it into another club? Do you know what I mean? So I just think, no, it's not down to Manchester United and Manchester City. I do think that more could be done in terms of where the money in the game is going and that trickling down to grassroots football. But giving a bad owner more money doesn't make sense.
I think the reason why I asked that question is because there's loads in this area.
There's
loads.
Football's massive up here. There's so many football clubs left, right and centre up here. And I do actually think non-league and the lower divisions football has actually maybe benefited a little bit from social media in terms of, everyone wants to be there. They benefited from those kind of things. But then you're also seeing greedy owners coming in and thinking, how can we make a buck? How can we make the quickest buck? And that's the problem. They're not having the proper fitness and proper checks or whatever they are. And it's suffering, and teams are suffering because of it.
So Adam McCullough believes none of the Manchester clubs have an effect on the local surrounding clubs that are struggling. It's just a case of bad ownership and the incorrect checks by the authorities. But we're going to move on to a final 2 clubs, and these 2 clubs have actually won the Premier League in 1995 and also the FA Cup in 2013. So it's not all bad, right? The greatest moment in Wigan Athletics history.
3 minutes left.
FA Cup winners, a huge upset beating Manchester City to lift the trophy. However, the following weekend, Wigan Athletic were relegated from the Premier League. And I feel this is a success story. Despite Wigan being relegated, they played in the Europa League and had a major trophy. Myself, being biased as a Newcastle fan, I would probably take that if Newcastle were to be relegated, because I feel that we could bounce back. But to lift a trophy is my dream. I would love to see that, and I'm a little bit envious of Wigan Athletic. Now, Wigan, of course, would change places with Newcastle right now in a heartbeat. They're struggling at the bottom end of the Championship. They've been in League One, they've been back to the Championship, back down, back up again. Of course, Dave Whelan and his son are no longer a part of the club. They sold their shares to some foreign investors. The future with Wigan is a little bit uncertain. They don't know which direction they're heading. There's not much money being spent lately. However, this is a club in the Northwest which has won a major trophy in the last 6 to 7 years, and I think that is a massive success story for a small club in a town which is rugby mad.
Blackburn Rovers have their first title in 81 years despite a dramatic last-minute 2-1 defeat this afternoon at Liverpool. It would have cost them the Premiership if Manchester United had won at West Ham, but United's frantic late pressure failed to produce a winner. The result was a 1-1 draw, and Blackburn were champions by just 1 point.
In 1995, Blackburn Rovers won the Premier League. With Jack Walker's investment and Kenny Dalglish at the helm, Alan Shearer scoring loads of goals, Blackburn went on to win the title. But in the past decade, Blackburn have suffered a real low with the Venkies in charge. Tim Flowers, Henning Berg, David May, Colin Hendry, Graham Lasso, Stuart Ripley, David Batty, Tim Sherwood, Jason Wilcox, Chris Sutton and Alan Shearer. All of those guys won the Premier League with this club behind me in 94-95 season. It's so vivid you can name the starting 11 quite easily. And now the club are in tatters. Absolutely crazy to think that this club won the Premier League. The Venkies arrived in November 2010 with the fake promises of taking Blackburn back to the glory years, buying the club for just £43 million. They sacked Sam Allardyce just a few weeks after taking charge and replaced him with the inexperienced Scot, Steve Keane. Blackburn survived that season, but the following season they went down. Fans were unhappy with the appointment, unhappy with the performances, attendance has dropped, and of course Blackburn dropped into the Championship. There was protests, many fans boycotted and protested against Indian owners. Even the local and the national media criticised the owners. The club fell further down the pecking order and dropped into League One, but they did bounce back in the Championship and they'll be okay this season. It's unlikely that they'll gain promotion, but this club is a shadow of its former self. Jack Water, the Sir Great Jack Water, who pumped money into this club. There's a statue around the stadium of him. There's a road named after him. He'll be turning in his grave with the Venkies in charge, running this club into the ground. Goal scorer Alan Shearer, who we all know as Geordies, is loved by Newcastle and also Blackburn. He's got a street named after him. It's mad to think those glory years have been away. The local fans have been starved over the last 15 to 20 years. Granted, they've got a Premier League title, which many Newcastle fans like myself would dream of. But again, it's another Northwest club with poor ownership. You can't put the blame on the two Manchester clubs here. This case here behind me is all about shocking ownership. Should the EFL, should the Premier League do a check on every owner every 12 months? For the people of Blackburn, I believe so. My thanks to Clinton Ford and Adam McCullough for appearing in the documentary. Is it a case of bad ownership? Do the two Manchester clubs have an effect? Or do the EFL and the Premier League should be doing a lot more? Is it a combination of all three? Probably.